practitioners. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. Whenever time you're listening, we're glad you're here. My guest today is Joann Atchity, a good friend of mine, and one of my go-tos when I need some energy work for myself. And so I'm going to read Joann's bio so you can know more about her. And those of you who have watched us more or would like to see more of Joann, she was with us in a podcast last spring, I believe in May, I think. She had gone on a hike in the mountains and she was telling us about her experiences there. And so Joann Atchity is an RN with a BSN who has been an energy healer practitioner since 2011. She combines Reiki with Eden energy medicine, energy balancing, EFT or tapping, and Sanskrit mantra, and emphasizes the aura and chakras to balance both the subtle and physical body's innate rhythms, shift patterns, and create vibrant health. Joann has received training from the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, which is the ACEP, as well as Donna Eden's Energy Medicine Foundation's training. She feels that her unique gift is to locate and release energies that can become embedded or trapped within the aura. And most importantly, she knows that each client is unique and that spirit will guide each session. Her website is Joann Atchity. I'm sorry, I'm saying it so fast, I'm not pronouncing it correctly, .com, and you can connect with her through that. Or if you want to email her, you can message me or her through the description or making a comment below, and we'll get back to you. And so Joann, thank you for being here with us today. It's great to connect again, as always.
Thank you so much for having me, Carla. I am really excited about this conversation.
Well, good. And we're just going to jump right in. Right beforehand, we connected like 5 minutes before, and we had also visited on Sunday. And we were just in the middle of a conversation here 5 minutes before I started the live about how, as energy practitioners and as people living every day, right, we're time travelers, and how we are repairing or releasing, changing time, changing the timeline as we work. So go ahead, Joann, take us wherever you want to take us today.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel like one of the things that I really bring to everyone that I work with is the awareness of our own energy. We are energy. That's not metaphor. That's literal. We are energy. We are electromagnetic and so many other subtle energy forms, but largely electromagnetic. And I know that the ability to do energy healing is innate in each and every one of us. It is absolutely our birthright. But through modern birthing practices, so many things in our environment, we lose touch with our ability to sense our own innate energies. And one of the things that I really like to do when I'm working with clients is play with magnets. And I'm going to step back just a little bit.
Sure.
These are magnets. They're not like magnets. They are magnets. This is the South Pole. This is the North Pole. South Pole, North Pole. Same for your fingertips. South Pole, North Pole. And same for your feet. That the soles of your feet are the South Pole and the top of your foot is the North Pole. And so then I like to play with a pair of magnets. And so if you have some magnets, pause the video and go grab them. But if not, do this later. So if I take these two magnets and pull them apart, these are fairly strong. And I hold the magnet in my hand, and I lower the top one down. You can see that the lower magnet jumped almost an inch. That the electromagnet, or not magnetic or electro, but the magnetic field of this magnet extends quite far beyond the physical boundary of this magnet. The same with us. Our hearts generate an electromagnetic field. We all are very aware of the EKG tracing is the electricity going through our hearts. There's an EEG tracing, that's the electricity in your head. And those help to create one of the layers of the aura, or as it's more commonly called now, the biofield. But that electromagnetic layer is one of the many layers of the biofield, and it's one that is readily, easily accessible for most of us to work with. So that's where I like to start, so that people can begin to perceive and play with and enjoy our own innate magnets. So
Well,
if oh, go ahead.
I was just going to input what I feel so strongly, um, as well as the physical magnetic of our energy, right? It's the magnetism of our spirit, that is based on in our spirit, having that same magnetism for connecting with, knowing our oneness with the whole of the energy, with source, with God, if you will. To that is the source of that magnetism, and so it is here. And the
Beautiful.
magnetism, just like on magnets, works both ways. Um, so we feel that magnetism for the whole, and the whole feels it for us, and that draws us together. So,
That very well said. That. Thank you for bringing that aspect. So as I'm playing with my physical magnets, then I can feel them pushing apart, and that the two same poles. So we know that north attracts south, etc. But if I have the two same poles together, I can't push them together, and I can really feel that push apart between those two magnets. I can push it, I can get it all the way together, but it's hard. Then I can really feel it at an inch. But the more you play with it, the further away you can still feel. You can increase your own sensitivity to that magnetic field. And so when I play with it, I can feel it at a couple inches out. Can even, it's subtle, but I can feel it at about 3 inches out. So the next step is take your magnets, rub them together a little bit, and then feel that South Pole to South Pole push between your own hands. And depending on the state of your own innate energy, that's going to really determine how forceful that push is. Also, how much you've practiced, how much you've trained your intention to send energy out through your hands, to send that magnetic energy so that you can feel it. Um, and depending on how you're feeling, how you're doing, what's going on with you, that'll determine where you feel it. When you're first learning this, you might be half inch apart, or you might feel it out here. And the more you work with energy, it could be all the way out here, and you can feel it just as palpably. And I find that that bubble of energy is one that I feel I gather chi in that energy movement. That's a place that I'm gathering chi that I can actively utilize. So it's a really powerful practice to start to get to know your own energy and to feel it.
and you
I,
can you can
I made notes so that I'd
like
stay on
tune.
track, because Carla and I
Sure.
could go off on tangents and talk about energy all day.
Well, I was going to add to that magnetism, as you're feeling that magnetism of your own and beginning to practice, you can tune your day each day. Like if you start that in the morning or whatever, and you can feel that energy and go through in your mind different hours during the day of what your schedule is allowing, and you can feel the energy shift in your hands, and just stay with each hour or with each part of your schedule, and until you can feel tension easing, and it's like a, okay, go ahead to the next part. type feeling with the becoming from tense to ease. And just do that through your schedule of the day, and it'll help your day go much better.
Oh, that is powerful, Carla. So the thing that I wanted to really focus on, two things. One, rock the baby, we'll get to later, but the other is that, um, as I said, energy healing and access to our own energy is our birthright, but it becomes blocked for a lot of reasons. And one reason, I love the work of Gabor Mate. Dr. Mate is a Canadian general practitioner who's worked a lot with addiction, and he's done a lot with palliative care and hospice. He has his own addictions, but as a tiny infant, um, he lived in Budapest during the occupation in, I'm sorry, I've forgotten what year, but his mother, who was a wonderful mother, was wildly stressed and had a lot of difficulty being present for her infant, as any mother at wartime would be. And he understands that that set up his nervous system for not being available in the same way that if he'd had a caregiver who wasn't stressed out. So the words that he uses are, in no infants are not born with the ability to self-regulate. They must co-regulate with a regulated other and a regulated caregiver. And our birthing systems in our modern world take that infant immediately away, spend perhaps, especially with a C-section, spend even hours away from mom before they get held. And there's so many other reasons that we don't develop our ability to co-regulate. And so that is one of, I feel like, the biggest impediments to being sensitive to our own energies, is we aren't able to co-regulate. And Carla, I would love it if you would share what you were talking about on Sunday, about how the intention from the whole community is really intended to help facilitate that connection with the child in the community, and that
Right.
we've sort of lost that.
Yes. Joanne and I were talking, and it had come to me um, that her rock the baby, as she calls it, what she was showing as a way to help restore that vagus nerve functioning that she was just talking about, was really a physical, tangible act that was almost exactly like what I was showing. And I talk about it in my book, Ancestral River, A Spiritual Journey for the Living and the Dead. And I was told to call it holding. And it's holding the spirit's intention for the baby, um, so that they would know their oneness and know this, and therefore retain the calmness and security and safety feeling of knowing that you're part of the oneness, until they can hold it for yourself. And that this intention holding used to be known, everybody knew it. And so it wasn't just the parents, they would start holding it. The parents would start holding this intention from before a child was conceived. As they were wanting a child or intending to have a child, they would start holding that intention for the child. Because I found evidence in the biofield and in my own, in holding this intention for people, but in the biofield, in my work, I find evidence there's this gap, a physical gap in your biofield between the death energy, or the current day energy of when your ancestors died, or the ones that are still living, and when your own biofield starts, the own record of your own life starts. There's this gap of a foot and a half to 2 feet, and in that gap, it's parental energies a lot. You can also find current day at times, but it's parental energy. What happened to your parents' lives, what emotions they were feeling and going through, um, at conception, gestation, and birth. But I have been shown, I have felt, I know myself, where it is up to 2 years before. You can find things happening in the parent's energy up to 2 years before the child is conceived. And so this just verified to me, and what I'm saying with the holding, that the parents hold this energies for the child because we individuate. We're part of the oneness before we come to earth, and we individuate into to from the whole to become our own energy in preparation of coming or returning to a different life here on earth. And so there's this period of time, and the parents hold this energy, this intention that the child would know its oneness. And there's 5 parts to knowing your oneness, and I talk about that in the book. And one is knowing that you're spirit beings, and knowing that your spirit was meant to lead and guide your mind. And there's 4 other parts. But everybody knew this. So once the child was conceived, or even probably um, during the time before conception, the entire community would hold this intention for each other, or the extended families and friends would hold these intentions for that newborn child before it was conceived, so that it spanned the time from when it left the oneness, actually, but when it was still in the oneness, and spanned that time up through conception, gestation, and birth, until the child was old enough to feel that and respond to that spirit call of its spirit within us, to that magnetism for the oneness, and when the child could hold it for itself. And I was thrilled to when I caught this connection with Joann's work of Rock the Baby, and how I was shown it this exact same thing, but in a different way. Yeah.
Oh, that was beautiful, Carla. Thank you so much. So when we find ourselves in modernity, disconnected with that gap in our biofields, in our awareness, um, my thought is, what are all the tools that we each can use to reestablish that connection and close that gap?
Mhm.
And we have lots and lots of things that we can use. Working with our significant other, sometimes even as an adult, you make that first real connection where you can connect your energy to someone else. Siblings, friends. Um, Probably the biggest and most important is connecting with nature and earthing and grounding. I know that you, Carla, are really in tune with the energy of trees. I absolutely am filled to capacity every time my feet are in the sand at the beach, at the ocean. And those are ways that we can reestablish our connection to source. And it's not just a nice idea to take a minute to do that. It's critical. It's
Yeah.
it's what we
Yes.
must do in order to be able to be whole again. Um, I studied a lot with Donna Eden, and one of the things I heard her say is a dead battery cannot jumpstart itself. And so I'm going to update that verbiage just a little to say a discharged battery has trouble jumpstarting itself. But if you're still carnate, if you're still living and breathing, your battery isn't fully discharged, and there's still some energy in there, and you can still move it. And so I think that's a really powerful is you have access to so much of your own connection and the ability to reopen yourself to that connection. The other analogy that I really like is our energetic and physical bodies have lots of compensatory and protective mechanisms built in. And one of the things that protects us from overwhelm is to slow or meter some of our energies moving through. And so one of the things that I find with most people who are stressed is the energy, as we know, the right side controls the left side of the body, and the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, etc. That that movement of energy across the midline is slowed and really impeded when someone's stressed out. And getting that reestablished can really help you move back into your own functioning. And the analogy I like to say is an electric circuit breaker box cannot reset its own circuit breaker. But luckily, we can. We can. There's a lot that we can do to reset our systems. Um, and when you're finding that difficult, it is such a gift to be able to connect with an energy practitioner who can help you get back in touch with your own systems and get your system and your energies flowing through yourself again.
Very much so. Yeah. Um, it brings up one of the, I find the most difficult times to do that is if I wake up during the middle of the night, right? And then I can't get back to sleep because my mind keeps going. And sometimes it's not like it's scary or worried or anything. It just keeps going about what's going to come in the day. And that happened to me last night, right? I had an early client session this morning, and it was like I was just wondering, well, what's going to happen today? Because it's always interesting, with any session, what the universe and what that client is ready to happen. And it was like, um, but I couldn't get back to sleep, and so um, I tried what you said. I do have this exercise. It's called Psych-K. You can find more about it online, but I really like it because it's a double cross or a triple cross of that midline that you're calling, right? So you can sit
Mhm.
down on a chair, or you can do it in bed, laying down on your bed, and you cross one foot over the other. So like if you cross your right foot over your left foot, then you cross your left hand over your right hand out in front of you and do the other cross underneath, I guess you could call it. And then you can hold it here and say a positive affirmation for like an exact opposite of what your thoughts. If you were worried, you say an exact opposite positive intention and hold that, and you can eventually feel your energy shift and change. And then you can
Mhm.
change and lock it in through your fingers focused at your third eye here and saying that same intention. So just to help, but at night it's very hard sometimes to come out of it. Do you
Mhm.
find that?
I used to for decades. I really had trouble, but thankfully, um, I have really shifted so much about my physicality that I'm a pretty good sleeper these days. Sorry to brag.
No, that's great. And I usually am
Because I
too.
feel like it is a big deal whether or not you get your sleep. It's a big deal.
It
And
is.
I,
It
for
is. Yeah.
decades, was up 6 or 8 times in the night and did not sleep for years. And so I understand how valuable that is. I wanted
Right.
to touch base a little bit on why, because I really think one of my first words as an infant was why. Why is that? Why? How does that work? Why? And because I said so was never an acceptable answer for me. So I would love to share a little bit of my understanding of how those crossing the midline exercises work, because I think it
Yeah.
helps for me anyway. When I know how something works, it helps me really settle into doing it and see that, oh, yeah,
Hmm.
that's going to have this effect. There are cells in every joint, proprioceptor cells. Our proprioception means where you are in space or knowing where you are in space. And there are cells in proprioceptor cells in every joint. And so when you cross things, you're opening up pathways in your brain because your brain is having to say, okay, that thing is usually on this side and now it's on that side. And now I'm looking for it. And I really feel it helps the energy in your brain start to reconnect pathways that have been in that overwhelm place and have slowed or disconnected to protect you, and that holding those crosses really helps to open you back up. That's why it is
Nice.
so effective. So I love that you use that.
Nice.
Very
Yeah.
powerful.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for explaining it. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Um,
Very powerful.
it is
Okay.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. So the second reason that I feel that we can become disconnected from our own energies, and this one is really big, is we have systems designed into us, hardwired into us for our protection. That ability to slow the energy down across the midline and to just really cause your energy to, instead of moving forward in the day, to move backwards, just to force you into a resting place because you're too busy doing too much. And that's part of what illness is about, the benefit of illness. But the other system, I like to call it the bodyguard. And I've heard other healers call it the bodyguard, but it is an the system in us that holds habits. And that's a very good thing. You don't have to learn every time you get behind the wheel of the car, you don't have to learn how to drive again. Every time you want to walk across the room, you don't have to learn how to walk again. Those habits are held very much to our benefit. But habits that don't necessarily benefit us are held as well, and held strongly. And that bodyguard will keep things in place in the name of stability that we'd really rather let go. And I like to say the bodyguard is strong and powerful and clever, but not very smart. And so it can protect us from making changes that would, in the bigger picture, be to our benefit, because that bodyguard, its job is to keep things stable, even if making a change would benefit us more. And that, I really feel like, is one of the reasons to seek an energy healer that you resonate with, because they can help you, because that bodyguard will protect you from being able to access those things that are too big and too scary and too difficult. And so working with an energy healer that you resonate with, that you can allow, the bodyguard can actually be soothed into a place where it can let its guard down a little bit and allow things to shift and heal.
Yeah, yeah, we were talking about that the other day too. A few weeks ago, can't remember for sure when it was, and because I've been working through trauma that I experienced as a child, and I doing it purposefully, trying to heal more of the trauma and things. And a few weeks ago, I'd gotten to this point where I I felt this entity, or I thought it was an entity type of thing within me that was just so mad. It didn't want me to clear anything. It was, yeah, I mean, it was angry. It was forceful. It was, what do you call it? Terrifying in a way to feel that within me. And I called Joann. I said, "Help! I got to get this thing out of me." And so we had a session. Um, and last week I felt that again, that same, not quite as strong. I mean, I use biofield work, of course. I also find tapping very helpful for me too, and to alternate them back and forth. To one kind of works on one side and then something clears and you work on the other and something clears. I mean, it just is very helpful. And then to throw in another session with someone else that can see it from a different perspective that I can't see because it's me. And
Perfect.
yeah. And so, but the other day, then I was feeling this in clearing with this. It was such a deep clearing. And it was myself giving a biofield session that I'd done a few weeks earlier on trauma, but I was particularly listening again several times for myself to heal my own trauma. And I hear this entity or this thing again, this anger, as I'm deeply clearing and trying to release that. And I realized, oh, I don't think this is a separate entity like I did before. I think it's my little girl that was really, really hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and this part of her that's still trying to protect me. And so I was talking with Joann, and we were talking about that protective mechanism, and the what do you call it? The great protector, or
Or the bodyguard.
the bodyguard. That's what you call it. Yes.
Yeah.
And how that works and
Yeah.
feels. Yeah. And
And so that little girl had some very righteous anger that is intended to protect you.
yes.
Yeah. That said, that doesn't mean there aren't entities and things that attach that are
Absolutely.
separate, and when the time is right, they need to go. That's really, I feel like the maybe the lion's share of the work that I do with clients is, for whatever reason, source has given me the gift that my hands will go right to where there's something that needn't be there.
Hmm.
And I have a bit of a technique, a modality in order that to release that. And then I'm very grateful that I have a way to then send that fragment of whom or whatever it is on into the oneness. So
Yeah.
that's a separate thing. So
Yes, it
that can
is.
be there, but then your bodyguard can also be working. So it takes some practice and discernment to figure out which it is, or both.
And well, there's so many of those different energies that can be there. I know this is a little bit of our tangent that we often go on in different ways, but like I've cleared things like, a ball and chain around someone's ankle,
Uh-huh.
or sometimes it doesn't feel so much like a ball and chain, but to me, it's like the mob used to do: stick your feet in a block of concrete until it hardens
Uh-huh.
and throw you into the river. I mean, it feels like a block of concrete. Or sometimes it's around the head. It's like, something massive, you know, and it's just, wherever you find it, it differs in different people.
Right.
I've had people clear, other energy workers clear, um, uh, direct entities with me. They saw red energy running out of me
Hmm.
and different things. It's just so
Right.
many different things that we collect around us, from different situations that we're
Yeah,
in.
that's partly because we're magnets.
Yeah,
We
yeah, I
sort
think
of,
so. And
yeah, our energy
it's
will attract.
Yeah, yeah, whatever we're feeling, if we're feeling that
Mhm.
sadness or deepness or whatever, we're going to attract
Right,
things that aren't helpful, that feel that energy too, I guess.
right, right. So, if that's complete, we can go on to rock the baby. I like, as I already showed, magnets. I will use crystals to spin crystals, or spin magnets to open energy points that are blocked or clogged. Um, I like to use tangible props, tangible things that can help me more easily relax into what I'm doing. We don't need those. Our mind is the powerful aspect that really is behind all of this shifting and work completely. But in order for us to get there, props can be, and tools can be extremely helpful. Something that we can visualize can help us relax into that idea. And years ago, I had a lovely client who, she had one of the flattest affect of anyone I've ever met. Her voice was completely monotone. She could laugh on cue, but it really didn't sound musical. And I just found that interesting. And it turns out, on the day she was born, she had a bowel obstruction, and she had surgery the day she was born. And so they literally cut this little one in half to repair that bowel obstruction. And I'm sure it saved her life, but it also, I am speculating, cut her vagus nerve, which, we think of the vagus nerve as a cranial nerve, but 85% or so of the vagus nerve information goes from body up, and helps us to be, as we're embodied, to help us be connected into our body. And she really had trouble with being in her head, and even being, her energy was always way above her head. She couldn't come down into her body. But as we worked, and really the day she first told me that story about having the bowel obstruction on day one, her mom was kept away from her. I don't know if they didn't want mom to be frightened to see her with the bandages and tubes. And she was in a nursery in an isolette, completely separated from mom. And she said her mom did everything she could. She'd snuck down the back stairs of the hospital and tried to get to her little girl. And I was guided, I'm going to make myself cry. I was guided to invite that mother to use my arms to hold that baby. Let's right this wrong. Let's fix this right now. And since then, I've learned a lot about the work of Neville Goddard and how we have the capacity to revise the past. We really are that powerful. And so I picked up a neck bolster pillow, basically a cylinder, fabric cylinder, and I had it for my clients, and I picked that up and held it like a baby. And it was one of the most tangible, palpable experiences I've ever had as an energy worker. That the presence of that sweet mother and the infant in me and outside of me were so tangible, and um, so much shifted from that point in the past all the way through into the present, and then of course into the future. And that, I cherish that gift from source, and I have used it frequently ever since. And what I know to be true is that when we go back into a past and shift the energy around that memory and that moment and that experience, it does change the past. It's not metaphor, it's not an analogy, it changes the past. And so that's why I call working with, I use a surrogate. It could be a teddy bear, it could be a rolled up blanket or towel. I'll show you what I use. So this is just a bolster pillow that you used to be able to buy at the fabric store. I don't know if you still can. And the baby has a baby blanket that my dad crocheted that was my daughter's, and he has on my son's hospital knitted cap. But holding this, I can take myself pretty easily into actually that place and time, whether it's working with, I did a lot of extensive work with both of my children because they were both born C-section, and I didn't get to hold either one for about 8 hours. And when my son was born, I came down with chicken pox the next morning. And so he was in the isolation in the nursery, and I'd had a C-section, so they wouldn't let him room in with me because they said I was too sick. And so he went home from the hospital with my mom, and I was still recovering in the hospital. So I've spent maybe as many clock hours as those hours of separation actually were, going into that nursery and rocking my baby for my own benefit and for the babies, to reestablish the bond and the connection and the energetic reality of I'm here for you and you are part of me. And it's it has been wildly helpful for me personally. Then I realized I can do this for clients. I can, and one of the things I love to do is teach clients to do this for themselves. That if you're not feeling like you can self-regulate, even if you're a little better than you were back then, take your more integrated self today and pick up your unintegrated self from back then and create that connection with yourself, with the little one that needed to be comforted and wasn't.
Beautiful. Why don't we? I'm going to grab something. Anyone listening now, take time to pause or um, grab something you can hold and think of a time when you need to hold yourself or hold your own baby or something. I'm going to grab I have a little bolster pillow, a neck pillow here, a neck roll. That's what I'm going to use. And oh,
And I
everyone.
will say, I've experimented over this. This was probably, oh gosh, maybe 2012 or 2011 when I first received this technique from Spirit. And I've experimented with lots of different surrogates and baby dolls and teddy bears and so many different things. If you're going to do this as a practice, find something that really works for you. I find that any kind of a baby doll that is vinyl or plastic, if you touch it, then that's going to like break the spell. It's going to pull you out of that deep connection and that deep experience. That's why I love the bolster, is because even if even if I touch it to my cheek or touch it to my hand, it's not cold. It doesn't feel alive, but it does feel easy to connect to. And so as you choose what to hold, something that that just feels really good in your arms is a good choice. But anything will do, since you don't actually need the prop to do this at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, why don't you go ahead and get us started then?
So I usually use Sanskrit mantra. I have a short playlist. It's about 20 minutes, and it's the Ganesha mantra, and then the Danvantre mantra, and then a little bit of the Mula mantra, and that's what I listen to the music of Deva Premal. If you don't know Deva, look her up. Deva Premal is a exquisite German-born classically trained musician who most of her music is chanting Sanskrit mantra, and it is deep and powerful and beautiful, and I so resonate with it. So usually Rock the Baby for me is I will play that playlist and chant the mantra with it, because it takes my busy monkey brain completely out of the picture, because that holds my attention enough to connect to this energy. Um, that's of course copyrighted, so we couldn't play it here. But you can do anything that appeals to you. If you're comforting yourself during a particular incident where you weren't scooped up and held and given all of the love and attention and utter acceptance that you needed, go back into that experience and be that presence that is unconditional love and unconditional acceptance, and be that for yourself. And maybe that's singing a lullaby, maybe it's just making nonsense sounds, maybe it's reading a nursery rhyme. Whatever feels good to you, it's that good feeling. It's that powerful love, that powerful energy that does the magic. So it's however you need to get there to get into that feeling. And I always get there through the mantra, but it can also, I used to sing Puff the Magic Dragon to my daughter. So when I did a Rock the Baby for her recently, that's what I sang the whole time. And you can absolutely make this your own, and just let your heart be full, let yourself feel as good as possible. If it's something that you're frightened about, that you can feel fear or anxiety coming up, what another thing that really really is helpful to me is I heard Esther Hicks as Abraham once say, when you're reaching for a better feeling thought, and she said, remember a time when you were expecting something that wasn't so great, and then it turned out really good, whatever it was. And you felt a palpable sense go through your body of relief. And for me, that is one of the things that, for whatever reason, I can access that the easiest, is to go in and find a moment of, oh, where you exhale, you sigh, oh, everything is working out perfectly. Everything is fine. That thing I was afraid of, that's not real. And that sense of relief really opens up the energy channels. What would you add, Carla?
I'm just listening. I was remembering Puff the Magic Dragon. We're about the same age.
Yes.
The TV show that watched all the time.
Right.
Yeah, Puff the Magic Dragon. But yeah, but it kind of went along with that relief. What I was feeling for myself was with this 3-year-old trauma. I was going to picture, because I've done many things to work with the trauma itself, but what I feel is needed this morning, what needs to be held, is I didn't get held afterwards, after this sexual trauma that happened when I was 3. And because no one knew, I was told not to tell anyone, right? Or I would be a bad girl. And so I never told anyone. I never mentioned it at all. And I forgot it myself. I buried it within me. And so I was going to picture, and it brought up that kind of feeling of relief, of picturing myself coming out of the room or whatever, and my mom reaching for me to hold me. Everything's okay, right?
Mm-hmm. That is perfect, because that is the benefit, I feel like, one of many of this practice, is you can go back to that child, or it doesn't have to always be a child. Sometimes it's a grown-up who needs to be held. But you can, I feel like it's easiest to connect even to the grown-up through holding the baby surrogate. But as I mentioned Gabor Mate earlier, and I've heard him and other healers as well say, the trauma is not what happened to you. The trauma is not having your mom come scoop you up and hold you and make everything okay again.
Yeah.
And so that is the tremendously beneficial aspect of giving yourself, your little one, or someone that you love, that what didn't get held. Because just as in my first experience with Rock the Baby, I invited that client's sweet mom to come in and use my arms to hold her. And it was incredibly powerful. And then I realized I can do that for myself, my children, and anyone that I'm working with.
Well, and it brings back to me the thought, it's not the emotions that we feel. Like you'd said, it's not, the trauma wasn't what happened to you. It just like, it's not our feelings that are bad. It's not the emotions that we feel that are bad. It's hanging on to them. And so in the trauma, it's not, like you said, not being held afterwards that we hold on to, that I wasn't ever held, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the disconnect in your nervous system and in your whole energy system becomes ingrained, habitual. I don't want to say permanent, because it isn't, because as Carla and I both well know, as these old patterns that have taken up residence in your energy systems can be shifted, can be tuned, can be changed.
Absolutely.
And so one of the reasons that it meant so much to me, and I'm just so grateful to you, Carla, for this opportunity, is I just feel like that this technique is so accessible. Anybody, anytime could pick up something to use as a surrogate, a towel, a blanket, whatever you have, and rock yourself if you need to. And it's just such an immediately available technique that anyone can use.
So, do you advise continuing to think about that incident as you're, or, that being held as you're doing it to maintain that higher thing, or do you just, you know, let it go? How do you stay in that energy, and how do you know how long to stay in the energy?
Right. It will flow. It will flow when you're connected. Um, Usually when you're doing any sort of energy work, or at least that's where I am now, is I feel when there's a sense of completion, so that you know
Mhm.
you're done for now, not necessarily done, but done for
Right,
now.
right.
Um, but yes, I really um, endeavor to remain in that moment until I feel that the issue has resolved, the connections have been made, the when a child falls down and skins their knee and you scoop them up and hug them, if you hold them too long, they're going to wriggle down and say, I'm good, I'm gone. Let me play. And that's the feeling that I've experienced many times doing this with clients, is you'll get to that place where the maybe not the infant so much, but certainly the toddler or the child say, oh, I'm good now, thanks, love you, bye. And that's how you know. So you stay with them as much as you can do until you reach that completion.
Oh, that just totally reminds me. This will take us off. I was tuning a client remote the other day. The mother called me and said, my little girl's sick and she really wants to be tuned. Can you tune her? So I said, sure. So I was tuning her, and I got to this place, and it was a lot of thick dissonant energy. You could tell something was surrounding her, a cloud, of this illness and whatever. And it was like all of a sudden the little girl, she's 8, said, or 9, she says, I feel much better now. Can you tune me now for this? I mean, it was, and I wasn't, I wasn't talking to the little girl. I was doing this by remote. Um, she lay in her bed and I was in the car driving. I mean, I wasn't driving. I was a passenger driving in the car and riding in the car and tuning as my husband was driving. And this little girl, I feel her energy is clear as day. I feel a lot better now. Can you tune me to do this? And ask me to do something else. And sure, it was so cool. But
Oh, that's
so,
perfect.
so I think people will know, right? They'll know.
Uh-huh.
And
And if you don't get there, if you don't get to completion, don't be discouraged. I really think that maybe going back to those practices of feeling the energy between your hands, doing the things that you can do to get grounded, really are helpful in your ability to connect into this experience. And also, if you need to work with an energy practitioner to just help unlock some of those things that have been locked down a bit.
absolutely. And I was going to say, I think it helps, like the two examples you had given of people, they both knew, like the one, both you, I think, and then it was the other lady who had said her mom had told her, that she had ran down the back stairs of the hospital or tried everything she could to get to the place to hold. But a lot of times we don't know that part of the story. We
Right,
just know that we weren't held.
right,
And like for me, there's in mine or whatever, well, my mom didn't know. And another time, but even in our adult life, there's things that we're going through, and it's not that the person doesn't love us or doesn't want to have that connection, but because where they're at at this time in their lives, they can't relate to us wanting to heal this or how we feel about it. And if they could, they love us and would want to, but they just can't. And I think it's important to remember we don't always know why or how. And
That's an incredibly important point, that we are probably on, well, I don't know which generation, but we're generations of dysregulated parents
millennia.
raising dysregulated babies. And you can't, just like that discharged battery can't jumpstart itself, a dysregulated mama isn't necessarily going to have everything she needs to help a baby co-regulate.
Right.
And I really feel that our modern birth system is sort of designed to prevent that bonding and that co-regulating. If it's not designed that way, it certainly is the impact.
Right, for sure. And that ties in, the placenta is so important for
Yeah.
as the baby, right? It's the part of the baby. It's
Uh-huh.
the baby's own tissue, right? And of course, it's mother, but it's more than that too. It's the energy of God that connects you to life, right?
Yes.
And it was meant to for that energy from your angel or your higher self or from the oneness, whatever that energy that we're all part of before, it's supposed to be transferred into us after birth or through the process of birth. But because the placenta is cut or the umbilical cord is cut so early, that we're left bereft of that actual
Absolutely.
energy that would cause us to feel loved, wanted, accepted, and safe. Right.
Right. And
Through
and
from
so
the
if
beginning.
if you if you chose to, you could embody your own placenta and
You
send your energy into you as an infant,
well, you can, and
because all
especially
time is now.
and not just that, but every organ in our body is in our body, of course, but there's energy of each of the organ in specific places in our biofields, and your placenta is still there. And I
Yes, very
specifically
much,
do a
very
tuning. In
much.
fact, the client I had this morning, just finished the placenta angel tuning. What happens when I tune the placenta is that angel or that source energy comes into you again and integrates with your own. And it's so powerful. And you're doing it not just for yourself, but for all your ancestral line that has passed that also want that. And it's just amazing, the change then that you can feel over time in having that as part of you, as part of your guidance system, and as part of your healing and restoration.
It is an unspeakably powerful experience. If you're considering, audience, if you're considering a tuning with Carla, go for it.
Well, and
That
vice
that
versa.
that placenta tuning experience is phenomenal.
Well, and I'll have to say that we'll plug each other here, Joanne. She had the placental tuning and the zodiac tuning, I believe, with me too. And and I've had tunings with her to restore the. She does a great meridian one. It's part of that vagus nerve reception, part of the completion or uh, revitalizing of the meridians that's often not done, that Joanne does, that is very, very extremely helpful. So, so there we go. And the process she uses to mend
Thank you, Carla.
tears and holes and in the biofield as she finds them. So yeah, energy work is awesome. It's very awesome. It's the core of our
Yes,
being,
it
right?
is.
It's
We're
our
all
life,
energy healers through what
and it's what you said. It's our birthright, right? Literally, or from our birthright, but it's there available for us.
you know we all do it all the time. If you ever are surprised, or you might take your hand and put it on your forehead, That's because there's some really important energy points in your forehead, the main neurovasculars. And how many people have you, or how many times have you done it yourself? Oh my goodness. It's to reconnect you in a moment when you're shocked.
Mhm.
We are self-healing, self-regulating all the time when everything's connected, and it's really exciting to me.
It is, yeah, yeah. Energy work is exciting and so awesome to. Oh, well, for me, the most awesome part is how spiritual it is. And because you're working, we're made of the light particles and the space between those particles that make up the whole universe, and that space is spirit, right? And those particles is our voltage, and
Yes.
so what energy work is working in spirit, and of course it affects our physical body, it affects our emotional body, and and spirit. And anyway, is there anything else you want us to know, Joann, about your Rock the Baby or about your work or anything before we close today?
Um, I think I feel pretty complete. I just really want to say thank you for having me. My message is recognize your own innate energies, feel them, practice increasing your perception of them so that you really connect with your own divine spirit. As I love how you keep bringing us back to that, Carla. It's so important. And if you'd like to work with me, my website is www.joannatchity.com, and Atchity is Atchity, and information on how to reach me is there. Email is probably best. And thank you so much, Carla. This has been an absolutely lovely experience.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your friendship.
Oh,
It's
and
been
right
great.
back at you, sister.
And I'm very thankful we live close enough to have met in person, and we'll do so again.
Yes,
And
looking forward to it.
thank you, everyone, for watching. We hope that this clicks with you, meets some needs that you have, and that you enjoy it. So we'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.
Mwah. Bye.